they aren't already, the Baltimore Ravens should absolutely be the favorites to win it all, win the Super Bowl this season. The Ravens roster is ridiculous, guys. This team is stacked. This team is super stacked. They have one of the most explosive offenses in football, one of the most dominant defenses in the NFL, one of the best coaching staffs, and Lamar Jackson. If this team does not get it done in 2025, if this team does not win a Super Bowl this year, this team probably will never get it done. This is the Super Bowl favorite. This is the Baltimore Ravens. Gronk, spike the like button. Don't be a jabroni. And subscribe. Ravens fans, let me know in the comments. Do you believe this is the year? Let me know. Because I think I might. I'm definitely leaning Baltimore Ravens right now, especially after the recent addition of Jaire Alexander. And we'll discuss that when we get to the dominant defense. But first, what did they do in 2024 to cause my belief in the 2025 version of this team? And how have they improved? They were 12-5 last season, and they began the year in rough shape. The Ravens were 12-3 after week 2. They dropped the first 2 games, surprisingly, of last season. They lost in the playoffs due to a couple turnovers, not playing the clean game they needed in Buffalo against a very good Bills team, the MVP of the NFL, Josh Allen, and they lost on basically a dropped pass. But that's not all. Not only was this team without Zay Flowers that close to getting to an AFC championship, that close to rematching the Kansas City Chiefs, but this team statistically was probably the best team in the AFC last regular season and the regular season before that, okay? This team last year was top 10 in offense and top 10 in defense. They were 3rd in points for, and they were 9th in points against. They were 1st in rushing offense and 1st in rushing defense. That is rare. That doesn't happen very often. Both in yards per attempt, the best in the NFL. They had the number 1 offense in 2024 based on a variety of metrics. Just pick your favorite. They were probably number 1. Derrick Henry led the NFL in rushing touchdowns. Lamar Jackson led the NFL in rushing yards per attempt, as well as a variety of passing statistics. Lamar Jackson is at the peak of his powers. Lamar Jackson is arguably a back-to-back MVP. As much as I believe Josh Allen was the MVP last year, there are a number of people that thought Lamar got robbed of that award. And Lamar was right there with Josh Allen as the best quarterback in football. Those were the best quarterbacks in football, right? Which means that the Ravens, if you have one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, coupled with the talent around him that may or may not exist in Buffalo, you should be the favorite to win the Super Bowl. Should you not? And then we get to, it's one final run for Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry looked dominant last year in Baltimore. He was ripping up the best defenses and the best teams in the NFL. And he was right there. If not for Saquon Barkley having his historic season, a lot more people would be talking about what Derrick Henry did in Baltimore. And in 2025, there's reason to believe that he has one more season left of dominance after what he showed in 2024. This is a freak of nature. This guy can't be tackled. He's faster than you and bigger than you at the same time. And like I said, you have one of the best, if not the best, most talented quarterback, one of the best, if not the best running back in the NFL. You have arguably the best combination of tight ends. And now you look at this offensive line entering 2025. It's not the best in the league. It's probably not the top 5. but it's somewhere in the top 6 through 15. It's somewhere in that range. There's reason to believe that the Ravens' offensive line will be better than last year. And last season, they ranked third in pass block and third in run block win rate, according to ESPN, which means they were an elite offensive line according to their metrics. According to PFF, they were 7th in pass block grade and 17th in run block grade, which honestly feels backwards, but that's just what PFF graded. When you go individual by individual, why I believe in this offensive line, there's more depth and there's more continuity. Some of these guys that were unknowns. I remember talking about the Ravens before last season and being very shook up about the state of their offensive line and uncertain, while giving them the benefit of the doubt due to their coaching and their ability to scout offensive linemen throughout the years. I still had my doubts starting a rookie right tackle in Rosengarten, starting guards that we weren't really sure or certain about, okay? But when you look from left to right, you got Ronnie Stanley, who re-signed, was one of the best re-signings in the NFL, graded 37th in the NFL last year with over 12,000 snaps, which is most crucial because Ronnie Stanley has been healthy, frequently unhealthy, not healthy for this team. And he was finally healthy last year. So hopefully that continues. But he was also 12th in pass block win rate, still remaining one of the most consistent pass blockers when available for Lamar Jackson. He's crucial to their success. Andrew Voorhees at left guard is going to be the main source of issue or flaw for this football team. I'm talking about not just the offensive line, but I'm talking about the biggest question mark on the entire depth chart when it comes to starters. Andrew Voorhees, they lost Patrick McCarry, who was one of the better run blockers in terms of win rate in the NFL last year. So he's got to step up. But you have beside him one of the elite centers in his prime, entering his elite form and prime in Tyler Linderbaum, who graded 3rd in the NFL overall, 3rd in run block grade, and also 4th in pass block win rate. One of the most complete athletes at the position. At right guard, Daniel Falele, who is 45th in the NFL according to PFF, a solid player, playing over 1,200 snaps last year. Again, multiple guys on this line playing a lot together, playing 1,200 snaps together. The cohesion, the continuity, that's something about an offensive line unit that is never, you could never undersell it to me. It's so important. The year after year continuity and understanding of each other and being able to work together to pick up games, stunts, blitzes, and everything else, especially when you consider you have Lamar Jackson, where the ways teams have kind of impacted Lamar in the past has been blitzes, and have been free rushers, and have been getting him off his spot and running him around and confusing him. So if you can pick up those things and give him a little extra time to diagnose, he's going to be that much more sharper and that much better, which is a scary thought. And at right guard, Rosengarten, who we mentioned, is entering year 2, which is reason to believe he'll be even better. Rookies at tackle typically aren't that good. Usually it's year 2, year 3 where they usually stand out. Last year, 46th in the NFL, but most importantly, 2nd in run block win rate. He was dominant on the right side, run blocking for the Ravens and Derrick Henry. And like I mentioned, they have good depth. I believe better depth on the O-line than recent years with Ben Cleveland, Emory Jones in the 3rd round, who they drafted, and Joseph Noteboom, who's been a solid role player in other systems and other teams like the Rams, for example, being better as a backup who steps in rather than just a starter. He's one of those type of guys, and he can play left or right side. But you've got Emory Jones, who also could provide that extra bit of depth, especially at those tackle positions where Ronnie Stanley, as we've discussed, he may get hurt. He might miss a couple games. So you need to have that insurance, and I think the Ravens do have that. But who knows? They could even add another veteran to this offensive line like Brandon Scherf. So I think reason number 1 why this team will be better is not only do they have Lamar and Derrick Henry, I believe Lamar at the peak of his powers in his career right now, the last 2 years, which I think that will extend to 2025 with the same play caller that he had the last 2 seasons and continuing to build on that rapport from play caller to quarterback. But Derrick Henry, I think, still has 1 year left of dominance. And then this offensive line, I think, could be even better. Despite losing McCarry, I think that they can get better from just the fact that Rosengarten is going to be a year older and more experienced and maybe more dominant. Tyler Linderbaum really getting into his prime years. And then I just think the continuity overall being very, very strong. And the depth. So then we transition the conversation to the weaponry, where I think you can make another argument that they're stronger and better. First, you have Zay Flowers, who in year 2 in his career did definitely have a breakout season, but there's reason to believe that he could have an even bigger breakout in year 3. He was the first Ravens receiver, I believe, to ever actually be named to the Pro Bowl, which is extremely impressive. And I'm not surprised. I've been a huge Zay Flowers fan since day one. I wanted the Patriots to draft him initially, but, he was the 16th graded wide receiver in football last year, basically a top 20 wide receiver in the league. And I think that's fair. He's in that range for sure. He's one of the most unique in terms of his shiftiness. He's so quick and agile and elusive. It makes him very dangerous in the open field for yards after catch and in the screen game where he's very dynamic. But I think he could take another leap forward in terms of the overall receiving production, where he had 74 catches for 1,059 yards and 4 touchdowns, okay? But that was at a 14.3 yards per reception clip, which is impressive. And he was also 16th in yards per route run. So this was purely, truly an elite player at this position, or a very good wide receiver last year that I think has another notch. Like, I think he has a little bit more development, a little bit more crispness in his overall route tree to develop. And I think he can still get there because he has such unique movement skills, such unique quickness, stop-start capabilities that I think he could expand his game in year 3. So I'm looking forward to Zay Flowers, maybe even being a bit stronger as well with more offseason workouts under his belt. Rashad Bateman had his best season of his career last year, and just from the eye test alone, looked the best he's ever looked in the NFL, and I think that could also expand in 2025. He could be better in 2025, right? He's healthy, he's in form, he's at his peak. 48th in the NFL grading-wise last year, 43rd in yards per route run, but the unique thing about Bateman was how explosive he was. He had 9 touchdowns on 45 catches. He had 756 yards on 45 catches. That is a 16.8 yards per catch, and he was 9th in the NFL in ADOT, average depth of target. So he was getting down the field, and he was making plays, and he was really the guy that Lamar would look to deep down the field. Okay, you would stretch teams in the middle of the field with your tight ends, Zay Flowers underneath and intermediate, and then Bateman down the field. So I love the layers of this attack, and you add another layer with DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins could be the possession receiver that they don't have, the third target that maybe could win a one-on-one against one of the depth cornerbacks of an opposing team. Maybe he's a red zone option like he was in Kansas City, being pretty successful there. But actually last year, D-Hop played pretty well. He was 26th graded in the NFL for Kansas City, which is not too shabby. I mean, that's a number 1 receiver according to their grading. Now, I don't believe that personally, but that's their grading, okay? 43.7 yards per game in Kansas City, only 28.8 in Tennessee. He was dealing with injuries at the beginning of the year, and that seemed to slow him down and wear him down. You do wonder if he's healthier with a full offseason to prepare and get stronger and healthier and faster and quicker again, what he could be. Maybe he's even better than last year, right? There's a possibility, okay? He had 610 yards overall, but the thing about him is 54th in yards per route run, not quite the same player, and he was bad in the playoffs. He only had 29 yards in 3 games in the playoffs, and he kind of faded out of the offense. They used Worthy a ton, still Kelsey involvement, and then obviously Hollywood Brown took a big leap in the playoffs for them, and DeAndre Hopkins took a back seat to those guys. But DeAndre Hopkins, as a number 3, if he gives you anything, that would be beautiful, because the Ravens haven't really relied upon a third receiver very often in the Lamar tenure because of how often they use 2 tight ends and they use a fullback. So anytime that they do need DeAndre Hopkins, because he won't be on the field all the time, I feel like that's a very nice, third option and a very reliable option and a guy that knows what he's doing, and he could play inside and he could play outside and he could play in the red zone and he could convert on third down. So that's a much more reliable third target than Nelson Agholor, even if you lost Nelson Aguilar's explosiveness. But you could replace Nelson Aguilar's explosiveness with these younger receivers like Tez Walker, who was drafted in the 4th round last year, who John Harbaugh is talking up to the moon right now. Tylan Wallace, who actually did have the 5th most yak per catch last season, only 11 catches on the year, but effective with the ball in his hands. Tylan Wallace has been, I think, in the NFL for 2 to 3 years, Ravens fans, correct me if I'm wrong, but 70th according to PFF, which isn't bad for a 4th receiver, 5th receiver type. So those guys will be competing for that 4th, 5th role, and maybe that field stretcher from the slot type of position whenever you want to interchange them with DeAndre Hopkins and add a bit of speed. Okay, so I really love the receiving core this year. I think it's the strongest Lamar has ever had. I thought last year's was stronger than what he's ever had. I think this year is even stronger than that. So that's a big time deal. Then you look at the depth at running back. Justice Hill, who's a great pass catcher, good on third down. Keaton Mitchell, who will be a year removed from injury and probably more explosive, faster, quicker, all that sort of stuff. Where as a rookie, he was dangerous. He was a demon. Like, he was difficult. If they would have had him in that Chiefs game, who would have known what would have happened? I mean, the team might have gone on to win the Super Bowl that year if Mitchell was available. At tight end, we know what Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely can be. Andrews is seemingly taking a back step or like a step backward, as he did have the least amount of receptions and yards per game in his career, but he still was highly, highly efficient. He was leading the NFL in EPA per target last year. That's insane. And he had 11 touchdowns. And he graded 4th in the NFL at tight end. So he's still a top 10 option at the position. He might not be quite the athlete or as elusive as he used to be, but he's still a darn good red zone target and a big-time contested catch guy. Likely should see even more involvement as well. Likely is, like, I think the best-kept secret or, like, the most underrated weapon in the NFL that his team doesn't even really frequently use. Like, they should use him more. He was graded in the top 7 as well, according to PFF. Likely is just so smooth and quick for a guy of his size, and he adds that yak dimension that Mark Andrews does not, and I'd like to see him play more. So overall, I look at this weapon group for Lamar, and I think it's the most dangerous and the best he's ever had. Their offensive line should be better than last year. While it's not the best Lamar has ever had, I do think it could be better than last year. So overall, looking at the offense, that was already the best in football last year, was already the best running the ball, was already the best running the ball at quarterback, running back, all of it, right? Like, this team is going to be absolutely terrifying on offense. They can overpower you. They can be more explosive than you. They can come from behind because of the explosiveness. They can lead from ahead because of the power game. There's just so many ways they can beat you. And you couple that with the defense that I believe will be top 3 in the NFL this year. I'm not going to say they'll be the best because that's really difficult to say. I've said that about the Texans. I feel like the Eagles could be in that conversation. I think the Ravens could be in that conversation. But I think they're in that conversation. Okay, the Broncos are another team that I think could be in that conversation. But the Ravens are definitely elite. Like, you look across here, and we're going to get to the reason why at the end here. But let's start with the big boys in the middle. I think the main thing is the Ravens are always good at stopping the run. And last year was no different. They were number 1 in success rate against the run, and they were number 1 in yards per attempt allowed against the run by the end of the season. All right. Matabike is one of the best D tackles in the AFC and the NFL. He graded 30th last year with 6.5 sacks after a 13-sack season in the year previous. Not quite the same pass rusher, but still a really good player and a back-to-back Pro Bowler. Travis Jones is a D tackle on the rise. He was graded 27th last year. Probably the most underrated defender on this team. Broderick Washington and John Jenkins also add some beef and depth. John Jenkins was recently signed, a veteran nose tackle who could just replace or rotate in if need be. The Ravens are the masters of finding big booties in Baltimore. I mean, they just are the masters at finding these massive humans that you can't run the ball against, okay? The only team I think similar is Tampa Bay. Like, that's the only team that I feel like gives me the same vibe. Baltimore is just always difficult to run on, and they're always bigger and more powerful than you, which is why a team like Buffalo has struggled with Baltimore in terms of certain matchups, like, because they're just much more speed and finesse based. And I really feel like the games that Buffalo has beaten Baltimore, it's coming down to mistakes, and it's come down to weather. That's honestly what it's come down to. Can Lamar get a little bit better in those elements, and can they find a way to maybe play the game in Baltimore? That would be nice. But the edge position, Kyle Van Noy is still kicking. 23rd in the NFL according to PFF last year, 12.5 sacks and 21 quarterback hits. I love Kyle Van Noy. Loved him in New England. He was my guy. Okay, Kyle Van Noy, versatile weapon, all that sort of stuff, linebacker, edge rusher. This guy never was getting close to 12 and a half sacks. I don't know what he puts in his morning coffee nowadays, but this guy has been absolutely ridiculous since getting to the Ravens. He's been their most underrated defender, or like one of their most important defenders. He is a dog too, and he brings that nastiness that the Ravens are known for, that edge that the Ravens are known for as well, and plenty of experience too. Odafe Owe was somewhat overrated and underrated last year. Like, he was 32nd in terms of PFF grade, so a number 1 edge rusher, and he had 10 sacks. That was his best of his career, and he had 23 quarterback hits, which is also more than Kyle Van Noy. Both of these guys were top 20 in terms of pass rush win rate in the NFL. But even with those two guys both featuring with 22 and a half sacks and 10 plus sacks each, which is very good. I mean, not many combinations. I want to say there's on one hand, like a team had 2 guys with 10 plus sacks. It doesn't happen that often every year. They still were able to go out there, and not only do they have depth pieces like Tavius Robinson, who had 3.5 sacks and 12 hits last year and was 66th graded by PFF, David Ojabo, who still we need to see if he can develop more, but 107 last year according to PFF, 13 games after only playing 5 in his first 2 seasons, had 2 sacks. But the X factor of this defense and potentially this team is Mike Green, their second-round pick out of Marshall, who I thought was a top 10 player, top 15 prospect in the NFL draft. He led college football in sacks, and he is a beautiful pass rusher. His skill set, his finesse, his overall bag of tricks rushing the quarterback is tough to handle. And you're going to notice that immediately. He's a ready-made pass rusher. So he can take some pressure off the old man Kyle Van Noy in certain situations. He can take pressure off of Owe in certain situations. And he can be another key piece. Maybe you take one of these bigger booties off the field and you add Mike Green onto the field for a little bit more speed, right? That could help you handle some of these faster quarterbacks out there. But he's an X factor. Yes, a little bit of a head case, but an X factor nonetheless. And you never know. They could still bring back Jadeveon Clowney, and I wouldn't be that surprised. He's currently a free agent. Their edge position is better than last year, and it has much more upside than recent seasons because of the addition of a young Mike Green who could take this defense over the top. Even the 2023 team, that was one of the best defenses we've seen in recent seasons, they didn't have this level of pass rush, in my opinion. So that is a scary thought. Linebacker. They're a little bit more flawed here. Roquan Smith is one of the best in football, but after that, Trenton Simpson's not my favorite, and they have a lot of uncertainty. Look out for Jake Hummel, but Teddy Buchanan was drafted in the 4th round as well. They lost Malik Harrison for that depth, but Harrison was terrible in coverage. Was not a fan of him. But back-to-back first-team All-Pro Roquan Smith leads the way, back-to-back 150 tackle seasons, and he didn't even have his best season last year. So I would expect him to play better. I thought he played better towards the end of the season once the defense sort of got settled. More on that in a second. But I think the underlying feature of this entire video, the exclamation point, for the reason why I'm making this video, the reason why I truly believe this could be Baltimore's season, the reason I believe they should be the Super Bowl favorites, their secondary is outrageously good. Like, their secondary is the best in the NFL. And I haven't gone through my process of ranking every secondary, but I feel confident about saying this. Like, they have 3 top 25 corners, and that's being conservative. They have arguably the best safety in the NFL. They have arguably the best prospect at safety in the NFL. And they have plenty of depth and improvement as well. So first, Marlon Humphrey is probably the most versatile corner or defensive back in the NFL. He can play corner, outside perimeter. He can play nickel. He could probably play safety. He doesn't do it very often, but he has the physicality and the size to be able to do it. And Humphrey's coming off arguably his best season of his career. He's a big-time playmaker and can lock down the bigger size receivers in the NFL. Then you talk about Wiggins, who I'm a huge fan of. I was a huge fan of in the draft. Love the pick for the Ravens. I think they hit a home run. Every time I watch Wiggins, man, he's always in the hip pocket of wide receivers. He's feisty. He's quick. He breaks on the ball well. He's very tough to land a completion against. Like, Wiggins is so good. I think he could be one of the best corners in the NFL by the end of this year. Like, he graded 25th. His numbers were very, very good for a guy that was a rookie. And as a CB2, basically, He might be the CB1, but like in terms of matchup on the outside, I'm not sure how they're going to do this, especially with Alexander now, which we'll get to, but like he's probably the CB2 and he could be like a top 10 corner in the league next year, and I wouldn't be that surprised. Then you have Jaire Alexander, who has been a top 10 corner in the NFL before. He's been a top 5, top 3 corner in the NFL before. Maybe never the best, although I think PFF may have graded him as the best one season in 2020, but I feel like Jaire was definitely in the conversation at one time. And he is like not the biggest guy, but again, like Wiggins, just quick, shifty, like so good laterally, and also physical in a way where he can jam you and press you. He's so much stronger and handsy than a lot of the guys of his size. So I think that this corner trio is the best in the league. It's ridiculous, honestly. Like, it's close to like the Patriots in like 2019-ish, where it's like, wow, this is an incredible trio of corners, especially if Alexander is Alexander and he's healthy. I mean, even when he played last year, he was 19th in the NFL. That's not too bad. Even if you get that, that's a ridiculous upgrade over Brandon Stevens, who is one of the worst starting corners in the NFL and constantly picked on. Chidobe Awuzie is also one of the most talented number 4 corners in football, grading number 60 last year, but he's had seasons where he's been a top 32 corner in football. I think that's fair, right? So again, you go to those safeties, Kyle Hamilton, who is the only safety, elite grade in coverage, elite grade in tackling, elite grade in pass rush, elite grade in run defense, elite grade. Like, he is the guy at safety. Playmaker, ball hawk, instincts, off the charts. We know it. Malachi Starks has similar level instincts and IQ. He might not be the athlete that Kyle Hamilton is, but he could be a great free safety replacement for Marcus Williams, who by the end there in Baltimore was just run down and no good anymore. Ardarius Washington is also the best kept secret of the secondary. 8th grade in the NFL at safety last season, 5th in coverage grade, and he's great as a roaming deep free safety. So he is a perfect third safety because you can bring him on the field and he can play that deep quadrant of the field while these other two roam, and you can also have versatility, right? Like, there's so many different ways you can deploy this personnel. You can have Alexander and Wiggins and Humphrey out there. If you, let's say Alexander gets hurt or Humphrey gets hurt, both have been injured throughout their career, you could easily plug in Awuzie. You could easily have a 3 safety look where Hamilton is at the nickel position. You could have Hamilton at linebacker at times in sub packages, and Starks and Washington at safety. I mean, there's so much that you could do there with all the different personnel and the flavor of your team. You could have Humphrey outside, but now with Alexander and Wiggins and Awuzie, you never really have to, which is probably ideal because I think he's better in the nickel spot. So, I mean, just incredible. And then you really back it up with what they were able to do on defense late last season because they were adjusting to a new defensive coordinator. They were going from the best defensive coordinator in football, Mike Macdonald, who got a head coaching gig in Seattle for a reason, to a first-time ever play caller and defensive coordinator, Zach Orr, a former linebacker for the Ravens. And they just trajectory, once they bought into the new scheme and the new subtleties, they got a lot better. Like last season, they finished 11th in EPA, 3rd in success rate, and 1st in run defense success rate as a defense, okay? That's still a very good defense. But from week 8 on, they were number 2 in EPA allowed, number 1 in success rate, and number 1 in drop back success rate. That's against the pass. So not only were they elite against the run, but also elite against the pass. And we saw that against the MVP in the Buffalo Bills, where even Josh Allen and the Bills couldn't really dice up the Ravens vertically. A lot of their damage was done in the run or the lower quadrant, the short and underneath game, right? Like, so, and the Bills had to really like kind of subtly move the ball down the field, okay? So to me, I just think the Ravens are a ridiculously talented team. I think that they have all the makings and now all the experience and all the heartbreak where they can put that all together into one package, and this should be their year. The Kansas City Chiefs are just they're going through a hangover, and there is reason to believe that they're going to fall off a bit. Just a little bit, right? The Buffalo Bills are going to be the main competition, in my opinion, for Baltimore. But if you're going team for team, talent for talent, Josh and Lamar are at the same level, but the rest of the teams, there's no question that Baltimore is more talented. And honestly, I feel like if the Ravens don't win the Super Bowl this year, or at least get there, this would be considered a choke. This would be considered a missed opportunity. So after the addition of Alexander, it's opened my eyes to how ridiculously good this team is. So they will be number one in my power rankings coming soon. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, Gronk spike the like button, and don't forget to subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on the Ravens entering 2025. It's Mitch. Peace.